Now what we're going to do is we're going to start working on something a little bit more advanced. We're going to follow this through from beginning to end here. Let's open up an example scene so I can show you exactly what it is that we're dealing with. Open up the scene called 12 Start. So I'm going to open that up, and what I'm going to have is a real-time asset here that I actually used for that warehouse scene. But you can see that this one's pretty simple. It's basically made up of two objects. One is the wall here that has a texture showing some wall damage. It's also got some holes punched in through it that I actually hand modeled in, and you can see the way that that looks. And then it has this rebar in the middle, and this is sort of the support structure inside of the concrete to just make concrete walls more reinforced and give them structural support. This is pretty common to see in construction. And you can see how the wall has some holes and the rebar is exposed, and this wall looks like it's been damaged over time and it's pretty old. Not just because of the texture, but also some of the rebar is exposed, and some of it's also cut up and broken. There's pieces of it missing and stuff like that. These kind of details really sell an environment and can make an environment, particularly one like this warehouse I did, where it's supposed to look old, decrepit, kind of run down, a damaged location. This helps to sell that effect and immerse the player in your environment. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a wall. Not like this one, kind of in a similar spirit, but our wall is going to be a lot different. And we're going to be taking that to ZBrush and sculpting it. So by looking at this, we can tell what we need to do. So let's go ahead and let's get started here. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create a poly plane. I'm going to go to the options here, and I'm going to take the width and the height and set it to a value of 10. I'm also going to take the subdivisions for the height and the width and set that to about 8, so we end up with something that looks like this. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this way so it's facing the correct way. And we no longer need this other wall, so I'll probably just get rid of it. So I'm going to take it and hide it. I'm not going to delete it, just going to go ahead and hide it. And now I have this wall right here, so let me move this wall forward a little bit. Okay, so let's go to the paint select tool over here, and let's switch over to face mode, and this allows us to select polygons basically very easily. Alright, so the polygons I'm going to select, let me take these two up here. I'm going to take some of these polys over here. So I'm just selecting some polygons here that are going to make up this wall. And you can select any polygons you want. You don't have to select the ones that I'm selecting, but I'm going to go with something that looks like this. Okay, and this is going to work out just fine. Now, if those polys selected, I'm going to delete them to basically punch a hole in our wall here. All right. Then I'm going to take this object here and I'm going to go to I'm going to freeze its transforms. Let's go to modify. I'm going to go to freeze transformations. And that's going to just zero out all the transforms and stuff, make it nice and clean. I'm going to delete the modeling history. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mirror polygon tool. And what I want to mirror this in is the Z-axis. So let's go ahead and mirror that in the Z. I'll go to the options over here. I'm going to take the pivot and move it back a bit so this has some thickness. I'm also going to go to the merge mode over here. I'm going to tell it to connect the border edges. That's going to give us something that looks like this. So play around with the settings till you get something that looks good. So basically, in essence, what you want to end up with is a sort of wall like this. Now, we're going to be using sub Ds here, so this is what I'm going to do. If I hit 2 on the keyboard, I'll switch to sub D mode for cage. 3 gives you a sub D mode without the cage. I'm going to work with the cage. Now, in case you've never worked with sub D is actually pretty simple to use. It's basically just a smooth version of a polygonal object. You adjust the cage to control the mesh underneath, which is the smooth one. Pretty basic sub D 101. And this is going to be going to ZBrush. So what we want to do is we want to set this up so that when it goes to ZBrush and ZBrush subdivides this thing into millions of polygons, it'll subdivide properly and with more control. So we're going to set up a mesh here. So what I'm going to do is with this object selected, I'll go up to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to use the Insert Edge Loop tool. And you can just come in here and insert some edge loops. And this is going to help to straighten out some of the curvature in the smooth mesh to control it. So basically, the more geometry you have, the more control you have over the smooth surface underneath the sub-D, underneath the cage. And with sub-Ds it's pretty simple. When you have edges and corners, the more of these edge loops you have, the more control you have over it. And we're using edge loops so that we can keep everything quads. Remember that ZBrush prefers quads, and I prefer to keep ZBrush happy. So basically just use the Add Edge Loop tool and add these edge loops wherever we need to straighten out some of these edges and things. It's a pretty straightforward, simple process. So I think you get the idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fast forward in the video until I have a complete version. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. I'm going to fast forward to get this done, and I'll meet up with you when I'm finished. This is basically good to go. As you can see here, this is pretty much what I have. Pretty good base mesh that's going to subdivide pretty nicely inside of ZBrush. Also might help to rename the object. Also, once we're finished, we don't have to map UVs to this. You could if you wanted to, but I'm not going to right now because it's not gonna. This mesh is gonna change so much that doing UVs just doesn't make sense right now. This is just a base mesh to get started with. Okay, so next thing to do for ZBrush, make sure you go back to your regular polygon mode. So get out of sub D mode by hitting 1 on the keyboard. Take this guy right here. We'll go to File. We'll go to Export Selection. And just like what we did with the panel in the earlier example, you want to export this out as an OBJ. We don't need materials for this. Export this out to a directory that you can find, open up ZBrush, and load it up. In the next video, I'm going to be in ZBrush, and I'm just going to go ahead and start sculpting this thing and get it going.